And we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to A Bookish Moment. I'm Sarah Burr.
And I am JC Kenny. And Sarah, we got a new author here hanging out with us, and I am so excited to chat with her. So I think it's time to get bookish.
Yes, we love having new authors join us. It's always fun
Indeed.
to meet a new face and to welcome somebody into the community. Today, we are celebrating Jenny Dandy as she celebrates the release of her brand new mystery, The Brownstone on East 83rd Street. Jenny, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, we're very excited to have you. And I know we've got some warm welcomes for you in our chat. We've got Farmhouse Reader and Claudia chiming in with hellos and welcomes. And as folks are hopping onto the stream and getting all settled, do you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself as well as your new series that just launched?
Well, I don't know what to say. Debut author at 65.
Yay!
And,
All right. Hey, it's never too late. Congrats.
Never too late. Never too late. It's been a really fun process. And I'm just sort of still in awe that I actually am published. So, my goal was just to get it as perfect as I could get it and then see what happens. But, obviously I pursued an agent and then during the pandemic, and then she found me, Sean, at Level Best Books. So that was really nice. And I'm in the Rocky Mountains, and I raised my children here. And after they all got grown and gone, I started writing in earnest. And so I took classes at the Lighthouse Writers Workshop, which is in Denver. So that was a 2-hour drive over 2 mountain passes.
Oh,
and
wow.
I know. Well, I had the option often of staying in Denver, but I'd be 6:30 class over at 8:30, and I'd be so psyched and so sort of amped from everything I was learning that I just would make the drive back up, over the mountains. So, and listen to books as I went. So that was it was a fun thing.
Well, that's so cool. Well, and that raises a question, because I just kind of want to dive right in with you, Jenny. The Brownstone on East 83rd is your debut novel. It is fabulous, by the way, folks. It is set in New York City as opposed to you living in Colorado. Could you tell us a little bit about the book and why New York City for the setting of your first novel?
Well, I lived in New York a million years ago. I was actually in publishing. I was working for Doubleday. And then I met my husband, and then, I left. But, and I loved it. I just always loved being in the city, and I loved thinking about it. And so then I thought of my character because I want to explore a manipulative narcissist. And I don't know if the narcissism, the true NPD came through, the true narcissistic personality disorder came through by the final iteration, because it went through so many different drafts. But at any rate, I thought, well, she's got to be manipulating for a particular reason. It can't just be for fun, because that's not a book. And so I decided that she would be manipulating her dinner party guests. And where do you have dinner parties but New York City? And so it just sort of evolved from there. And I did go back to visit, to give myself, pre-pandemic, to give myself a little, like a personal writing retreat to get current with it. So, nobody uses cash and cabs anymore.
Well, you've created a really interesting and intriguing world, because this book really dives in. It presents a mystery in a very different way than I think probably most of our viewers have experienced before, because JC and I, we're living in the cozy community. And so our main characters aren't necessarily thieves or you know, they're working the other side of the law. But there's like such a charm, and we've got a lot of characters to discuss, but we really, you know, it seems that Ronnie is one of your main characters, and she's very charming and very likable, despite the fact that, you know, we find her kind of pickpocketing people in the first chapter. So I'm curious how the kind of cast of characters came together in your mind, and you know, how you decided to kind of throw them all together for this mystery.
Well, that's a good question. So when I first was starting out, like this was, well, maybe 10 years ago, 9 years ago, because I first had this idea. I thought Isabel was going to be my main character. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just writing and seeing what came up, and so I realized that if she was truly NPD, she's empty inside, so she had to have a sidekick to try to tell the reader the story and what's going on. And so Ronnie was born as her sidekick, and then I had to figure out how Ronnie got there. And you know, she stole her bracelet at a gala event, and then so I attended the Lighthouse Writers Workshop, the book project. So I was accepted into it in 2018 and graduated 2020. And with that program, you get a full read of your manuscript twice. And so my first read, my mentor, yeah, it's a fabulous program, and they do it by Zoom now too, so you can apply and be long distance, which is wonderful. It's something the pandemic taught them, so it was the one nice thing that came out of it. But so he said, wait a minute, my mentor, when he did my first read, he said, Isabel's your villain. And I was like, yeah, I knew that, I just didn't want to change it, you know. And so because here she is committing crimes, of course she's the villain in it. And so there was Ronnie and Isabel there, and Frank was in early, and so I put the two of that, Ronnie and Frank, as the two point of view characters. Did that answer your question?
It did, and I think hopefully, because probably some of our audience members haven't had a chance to read your book yet, and we want to kind of introduce them.
You all need to change it. You all need to go out and buy it. We will give you 10 seconds right now, and if you can't hit buy now yet, you can do it after the show. We'll give you that. Okay, back to you, Sarah.
But I'm wondering if you can maybe frame for them a little bit who these characters are.
Oh,
you know, we have Ronnie, we have Isabel, and we have Frank. So who are they, and kind of how do they come together in your story?
Okay, well, so I won't give anything away really, because it's in the prologue when you first open the book that Ronnie is formerly homeless, so kind of street urchin person who she gets jobs just like at doing tray service at gala events. You know, it's just sort of gets paid under the table and has these jobs, even though she's kind of, I guess at this point she's living in a penthouse that's being renovated, and she escapes every morning before the workmen get there, and she steals Isabel's bracelet, and Isabel's the owner of the brownstone on East 83rd, and she is a con woman. So she steals Isabel's bracelet. Isabel catches her, and basically kidnaps her, and she just says, "I'm taking you home, and you're going to earn back that bracelet." And so Ronnie goes, "Okay, I'll think about this. Okay, I have to go. I'll just, scope it out and leave." And then she ends up staying. And so she is Isabel's butler to sort of throw off make people sort of unsettled, because she's very androgynous, I guess, gender fluid. And so you sort of look at her and go, is she a boy? Is she a girl? And so she's her butler. And then separately, Frank is an FBI agent, and they've been trying to get to a dealer who they think is funneling money to terrorists, which is why the FBI would be involved. And they can't get in. And so they start following his customers. And one of the customers is Ronnie, because she so Isabel just supplies Oxycontin to her guest as a favor and a way to get some cash. And, as one
As
does.
one does.
And so he follows Ronnie to the brownstone. He cases the joint, as it were. They surveil it, and they see at one of her dinner parties a guy who's a big donor to the NYPD Foundation. And so Frank goes, that's my in.
Mm-hmm.
And so he pitches it to his boss, who reluctantly agrees. And he goes undercover and gets invited through this guy to Isabel's house. And then she thinks he's a great mark. And so she invites him back for dinner parties and whatnot.
Such a web of just like intrigue and just like so atmospheric, with all of these lives just like mingling together. And I think New York as a setting is just like the perfect spot for this, because you think of kind of like Upper East Side, they live in their own world, and it seems like this is like this really like interesting and just very intriguing world that you've created. So I'm curious. So when did this idea, and maybe kind of throwing it back to the fact that like you originally were thinking that Isabel was going to be your main character, like how did this idea really take shape and kind of be the one that pushed itself out to be like, this is what I'm going to write a book about?
Well, you mean, how did I figure out Isabel in the first place, or?
Yeah, or just like what inspired this, or how did this idea come to be? Because it's a very like unique and intriguing idea.
I guess it just sort of evolved, but I really wanted to try to figure out how a manipulative narcissist works.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do they do that with other people not realizing they're being manipulated? And so I did a lot of research of just narcissism and in our population, and I guess psychologists talk about the overt and covert, whereas the psychiatrists wouldn't, because it's all just narcissistic personality disorder. So I just was really trying to figure out how I'm just intrigued by the human interactions. And so I thought, okay, well, she's got to be, I think, as I said, that she's got to be doing something for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
She's conning people. And so why would she be conning people? Well, she's got this brownstone that's whatever it is, $20,000 a year in taxes, and she's got to pay those taxes so she can hold on to it. So I thought about the dinner parties would be fun, and different schemes. I don't know, it just some of these things kind of just like happen.
Mm-hmm.
Although I do remember, sometimes I do. I don't know if you do this when you're trying to get ideas, but free writing,
Mm-hmm.
the artist way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I did. So I think you can't. I don't know if you've never done the free writing for Artist Way. They have this. You're supposed to sit there and do these exercises when, like, before coffee even,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I don't think so. But when you're still sort of in that creative vein, you haven't quite woken up, and so you haven't put all the dampers on yourself. And then you're supposed to write for 20 minutes and three full 8.5 by 11 pages. And so I had done that for a long time. And so now I can use that just to sort of self-talk,
Mm-hmm.
where I can sit there and start writing and go, okay, what are Isabel's schemes? What is she going to be doing? Keep writing, and so it kind of comes out that way. And so, I don't know, things just sort of come up as you write. I think that for me, I have to write to find out what I'm writing about.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I guess, why I don't outline, because I sort of have to just like, and I end up throwing away tens of thousands of words, but I just have to write to find out what's there. And then sometimes they surprise you.
I've never heard of free written
and
that
the
before.
surprises are our benefit. Let me tell you that. So one of the things that I'm curious is, as I was reading the beginning, I immediately thought of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, because of the fact that while tone's a little bit different, obviously, but you got Steve Martin's character. He's kind of the two-bit con man who gets kind of brought under the wing of Michael Caine. And then if you haven't seen the movie, folks, you got to see it. So, but I'm curious about the idea. You mentioned that Isabel does all this conning in this gorgeous place, in this gorgeous neighborhood. But at the same time, you leave us hints that she's not as successful as she wants to appear to be. Could you talk about that a little bit? Because I think that's a really clever way of showing that's yet another level of deception in Isabel's character.
Yeah, I guess because I was thinking about narcissism and the sort of idea of you think you're grander than you are. And so it's almost like she's fooling herself. And so, Ronnie sees it when she vacuums this threadbare carpet. And so they just turn the lights down low and strategically place a cushion to cover a stain or whatever. And I guess it's that she was fooling herself and trying to pretend that she was grander than she truly is. And then that desperation too, because if she were really successful, it wouldn't be any fun. She's got to scramble, and she gets desperate and she makes mistakes, and so she needed to not be quite as successful as you said, so that she could keep on going.
The hustle is real, even for the bad guys.
Yeah. I love that though. The Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. That was a fun movie.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned that this has been kind of like a 10 year like work of love and labor. And so and this is kind of going back to the craft aspect of it. And we were chatting a little bit about this before we went live at 4:30. But the idea that, okay, you've had this time with book one, but now, book two requires now I have to have it ready in a much shorter time period and figuring out, how to kind of pick up where you left off. Have you been finding, Jenny, that there have been, for me, it's always the first 3 chapters of a sequel book that are the hardest to write, because it's like, how do I recap enough so that people remember or can be introduced to things so that they know where we're going? But how do I make it fresh and new so that people aren't like, oh, she's already told us this. Like, why am I rereading things?
Yeah.
So what are some challenges that you've come against having completed book one and now working on book two?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually working on the, I don't know, second, third, fourth draft. I mean, I sort of, I edit as I go, which I think is a real no-no, but I just can't stand not seeing like a perfect paragraph before I start the next one. And which means you throw out beautiful, paragraphs or chapters or sections. But I think that you nailed it, that you want to have a standalone in the series, in case people, people come in the book 3 instead of book 1, but you also don't want to have all that boring, this is who I am and that sort of thing. And it's interesting because in book 2, as I'm going back over it, I realized I brought Isabel in a lot, and it made me think of what my mentor in the book project said, which is the first draft is you telling yourself the story. And so I was saying, and I started this when my second reader for the book project read my whole manuscript. And so it's like, I can't change it. I can't work on it. I'll start the second one. And so I think it was just me going, okay, Ronnie was with Isabel. Now she's going to be doing something else. The second book is the penthouse on Park Avenue. So it's a new place, new villain. And so I had to go back through and edit out some of that. And then I have a very fabulous critique group who also went, it turns out, went through the book project with me. So we sort of speak the same language because we did all the same weekend intensives and whatnot together. So, and nobody's afraid of saying, this is a white room. You can, where I am when I start this section now. And so they would say, I don't know if I understand, enough about Frank in the second one. And
Hmm.
so there's things where you can kind of thread stuff in. And I guess when I first started out all those years ago, I remember a couple of different workshops where people would go, this is all exposition. And I'm like, what does that mean? And, and so, and so I sort of pulled out every description and that in that iteration for that workshop, and then just try to put in little hints. So, and you just go, is this enough? Is this enough detail? Does this, you know will the reader want to scratch their head too much? Because you want to leave them questions, but you don't want to have too many questions that also then go unanswered. So who is Frank? What's he all about? Who's Ronnie?
I like
You know,
your remark about like not knowing like what, like, oh, this is too much exposition. And it's like I've definitely, like, I'm sure that you've heard the phrase show don't tell. And for the longest time it's like I never really understood what that meant in the sense of my own writing. But it wasn't until I began reading work for other folks and being like, like, you just told me a lot of information, but I'm not sure I believe it. Like, I believe it if I saw it happening rather than it being told to me. And it was like at that light bulb moment, I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's what that phrase means.
Yeah.
And so having those critique groups and other people being able to kind of point the way, or we think that we know our story the best, but like, listening to other people's advice is just, it's so invaluable in this whole process, because it's making sense of what's in our heads isn't necessarily the easiest thing, and it can take other people to help set you down on that right path.
Well, and I think that our craft and our art is uniquely that way, because all you have are these black squiggles on a page until somebody reads it and tells you what their reaction is.
Mm-hmm.
So how did they interpret what you put down on the page? Did you bring them along enough? Did you tell them what you were trying to tell them? And it's so, I think it's so fascinating. So we have to have readers, and we have to have readers early on before it hits that page, that the print, the
Mm-hmm.
bound book.
well, and that's one of the things I think you bring up a really fascinating topic with regard to the level of description, or especially with regard to it in this particular story with Ronnie, because I've read comments from a number of very top selling big shot authors, and they have talked about how often they prefer not to describe their characters very much, so that way the reader can kind of make that person, that character up in their own head. um,
Yeah.
and so you do that a little bit with Ronnie, but at the same time you describe her enough so we do get a clear picture of her from your perspective, because we need to have that given what she's doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that also, like, they just know that you don't have to have any description of a character, and somebody's got the reader has that image in their head. I remember Carter Wilson. I don't know if you know who he did the Dead Girl in 2A, and the Dead Husband, and which really shocked my husband when I was reading the book. He's like, oh my God, what's that? The New Neighbor. He just did the Father She Went to Find. But at any rate, his first book that kind of broke him out was Mr. Tender's Girl, and the artist put on the cover some blonde something or other, and he said, that's interesting, why did you choose that drawing? And they said, well, because she's blonde in the novel. And he said, I never had any description of what hair color she had. And so it's just, readers tend to just put their own people in anyway. And so often, um especially nowadays, nobody will really describe their character. If you read older books, they'll have a whole paragraph of, tall and whatever. But yeah, I tried, after I really learned the craft more. I tried to sort of just put a little bit in here or there. Like she's already tossing her hair out of her face, so it's the bangs or whatever. Um, just to give you a slight image, but not just an info dump.
And that also can make it easier, at least for us as the writer, because it's like, okay, then we're not tasked with like memorizing and remembering, like, okay, like how did I, explain this person from book 1 to book 2 to book 3, and making sure that it's consistent, because we do have those eagle-eyed readers that are like, on this page you describe her hair color as honey blonde, and then on this, in this book it's caramel blonde. Like, which is it? And I'm like, I think they're the same, but okay.
Do you do it? Do you have a Bible, a series Bible?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I know. I've started to do that as I was going through the edits and stuff for the. I was like, oh my God! I said her eyes were brown or what. I better put that down so I don't forget.
I was really good at in like the beginning of making sure. I mean, all of my main characters are in it, but definitely as the series has like gone on, I'm like, oh, I know that I didn't enter this person into my like compendium of characters, but like I don't remember what they look like or how I describe them. So then it's going back and doing Control F to search everything out. So it's always fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we've only got a couple of minutes left. Jenny, this has just been so much fun. Can you tell us, you've hinted at it a little bit, but The Brownstone on East 83rd Street is your debut novel, so congratulations to you again there.
Thank you.
Now, can you tell us a little bit more about the second novel yet?
Sure. As I said, the penthouse on Park Avenue, and there's a money launderer, and that's the criminal. And then because Ronnie's already been trained as a butler, she answers an ad to be this guy's butler.
Ooh.
And so
that's how she
really
inserts herself.
And she's live in too, which gets a little hairy sometimes. So.
Okay.
It sounds very, very fabulous, and look forward to hearing more. And you're kind of still in this reveling stage of my book's out in the world, and enjoy it for all of these special moments. For folks who may be interested in connecting with you or kind of following along to see if you have any other upcoming events, how can they best stay connected or find you on social media?
Well, I got the jennydandy.com is my website. I couldn't believe I could get that. And so I'll have events on there. I'll have the link actually also to this. So, I do have the events. I will, as I add events that's on there, and then links to purchase and the reviews. And then I'm on Facebook as, I think I have an author's page of just Jenny Dandy, which I need to get more activity on, but I'm also Jenny Keller Dandy just normally on Facebook and Instagram, and which I think is Jenny Dandy Author, and on Twitter, but the links are on the jennydandy.com.
Perfect. Yes, you're just starting your social media juggling when it comes to book promotion and all of that fun stuff.
Trying to figure all that stuff out. Yeah.
I mean, we're still figuring it out. It changes on us all the time. But this is an exciting time for you, Jenny, and we're thrilled that we could have you here on the show to chat about your new release and all of the fun that's in store. And again, to our audience members who joined us live, we had Farmhouse Reader, Claudia, Sir Reads a Lot, DHB, and Mizan all chiming in the chat during the broadcast. We appreciate you guys being here with us this afternoon. We do have another episode of the Bookish Hour airing this week at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday. Our guest is going to be Annette Dashafee. We're going to be talking about her latest release. It's book 13 in the Zoe Chambers series, so we've got a lot of ground to cover.
That we do, yeah.
And of course, Jenny, thank you so much for being here. The Brownstone on East 83rd Street, I got to remember the 83rd Street, is out now, available, and at all book retailers, correct?
Yes, yes.
Perfect.
So it's bookshop.org, it's Amazon. I know Barnes & Noble has it up.
Fabulous.
Excellent.
Well, again, we appreciate you sharing your time with us this afternoon. And to everyone who joined us live, we appreciate you being here. Until we see you again, folks, stay bookish. Bye-bye, everybody.